Hello, I'm Professor Toby Hayes, and I'm the head of the School of Digital Arts at Manchester Metropolitan University. SODA is a diverse, multidisciplinary and visionary school of digital arts providing cutting-edge facilities, rigorous practical teaching, sector-leading research, and impactful knowledge exchange. We pioneer new forms of digital storytelling through the application of emerging digital technology to produce graduates that spearhead the UK's booming creative industry sector. As the composition of our everyday experiences is increasingly defined by the digital, SODA focuses on storytelling as the means by which we can navigate and make sense of the world. Storytelling has the capacity to be an agent for change, a means of empowerment, and a way to transform how things are done. School ambassadors such as film director Danny Boyle are powerful role models that teach us how local tales can have long-term global effects. Whether delivered through a film, soundtrack, dataset, video game, or multisensory environment, narratives capture our experience and fuel our imagination. To find novel and impactful uses for storytelling, SODA collaborates across the university, drawing in expertise from, for example, the humanities, law, maths, computing, health, and psychology. Externally, we work with sector-leading SMEs, national cultural organisations, and renowned international universities. These collaborations position us as a leading player on the world stage of digital arts and business. Our internationally renowned research and knowledge exchange programme is an integrated offer that reflects this cross-sector ambition with specialisms in AI-powered immersive documentary, expanded reality, and digital IP. We offer a curriculum that is imaginative, inspirational, and inclusive. Our innovative approaches to delivery are designed to cross boundaries and enable collaboration across fields of knowledge. Initiatives such as our collaborative labs or collabs run through SODA's courses. They position multidisciplinary research and live projects at the heart of teaching, building practical creative links between the business and creation of filmmaking, UX, animation, games art, photography, and sound design. Alliances with commercial and cultural partners on the delivery of these units guarantees that we are responsive to industry's needs. In this way, SODA also helps show industry glimpses of the future. We excel in leveraging the opportunities offered by state-of-the-art technologies such as multisensory 3D systems, speech recognition, and generative machine learning algorithms. Based in Manchester, SODA is ideally placed within a city globally renowned for its industrial drive. Over the past decade, the city has been transformed by a progressive digital agenda to become a leading powerhouse of the UK's digital economy. Key to its continued growth and success is the city's diverse population, which offers a wealth of creative talent and international connectivity to celebrate and draw upon. SODA's teaching and research aims to challenge narratives of inequality and exclusion via the principles of critical thinking, agility, and creative digital application. The university's first-generation programme and SJM Concerts Futures scholarships ensure that in SODA, marginalised voices and identities are listened to. They are amplified and channelled into modes of agency that challenge the status quo and help new stories, policies, and alliances to emerge. In this way, digital disruption can be understood not only as an important technological process, but also as a cultural driver for societal enrichment. The expertise gained in amplifying their own creative voices improves our students' chances of future employment as soundtrack designers, web developers, film directors, animators, or in newly emergent fields on the cusp of recognition. They are further enriched and strengthened via their communication and leadership skills, which we nurtured through partnerships with the university's business school and our external partners. SODA empowers its students to be expert practitioners, creative collaborators, and ethical citizens. These principles are the foundations that the next generation of digital leaders will build upon. Together, we produce creative content that is made in Manchester and experienced across the world. We look forward to welcoming you into the new Soda building, which opens in September 2021. From myself and everyone in the Soda team, please stay safe during this uncertain and unprecedented time. I will now hand you over to my colleague. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy your time with us at Soda.
Hi there, thank you very much for coming and joining us at this BBC Digital Cities event. My name is David Jackson. I'm a lecturer and researcher in the School of Digital Arts. I'm joined by Toby, who you've just heard from, and Sarah Coward, who is CEO of Forever Holdings Limited, alongside Paul Canty, who is COO of Forever Holdings Limited. We're going to talk a bit about Audience with a Hero, the project that's advertised for this session. And I'm going to ask Sarah to talk a little bit about that now, and also just talk about Forever Holdings as a company.
Thanks very much. It's really good to be here. Thanks so much for inviting us to take part in this event. It's really exciting to be able to talk about our work and the Audience with a Hero project as well. And it's also been a pleasure to work with MMU as a consortium member on that project. So thank you for that.
Likewise.
Just to give you a little bit, just to give people a outline of what Forever Holdings does. We create voice interactive video conversations with people you would love to meet but won't necessarily get the chance. So that could be legends, heroes, witnesses of history, people that you would never get the chance to meet in real life. And the Audience with a Hero project was really taking our work to the next level. A lot of our work at the moment is focused on web accessible and mobile experiences, but we really wanted to investigate how immersive technologies, and VR in particular, could help heighten the human-to-human experience and the sense of presence. So rather than just being able to have a conversation with your hero online or via a mobile device, you could actually be in the same space as them and meet that person, ask them questions and get a direct response. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of the experience, I thought it might be a good idea to play a little bit of the content from our VR. We've been working alongside Nile Rodgers, who's the hero we're featuring in partnership with Universal Music. So here's just a bit of a clip for you.
Funk is a state of mind. Funk is a feel. It's a way of interpreting. I can look at funk. If I were writing a chart, I could say at the top of the chart, slow funk, or it could be a classical piece, and in the middle of the piece, I could say, now with a groovy funk feel. And if the musicians are right, or smart enough, or developed enough, or if the musicians are developed enough and they understand, they could switch feelings and they would instinctively know what a slow, funky feel would be like. Okay? So, yeah, I could play something for you. I'll do the basics to Chic's I Want Your Love. I write ensemble music, so I can't really play it all because we need the whole band to play it, but I can play what my part is. But when I'm with the band, I don't play it like that. I play. I want your love. I want your love. Whoopsie daisy.
Amazing footage, and I think it really gives you a great idea of the kind of warmth and the humanity, the personality of Nile Rodgers, the legend that is, and his musicality as well. So it's a really great way to kind of kick off our conversation around this approach and this technological approach. Seeing it now obviously seems it makes so much sense. It's so slick. It works so well. It would seem that it came like that, but obviously it didn't. So it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit more, Sarah, about where the whole idea came from and the approach that you've kind of pioneered here.
So we've got a really interesting history as a company. I used to be Deputy CEO at the National Holocaust Centre Museum, and the museum had a real strategic problem with their education programme, because a fundamental part of that programme was kids actually being able to meet Holocaust survivors, listen to their testimony, and then have this experience where they could ask the survivor questions and hear a response. And it was such a powerful part of that education programme. The centre really wanted to preserve that for when the survivors were no longer with us. So we looked at how could we use digital technologies to enable that preservation of that sort of human-to-human experience. So we looked at developing a methodology and a technical approach that integrated ultra high definition video with voice recognition and natural language processing, which would enable kids in the future who'd never be able to meet a survivor to ask that survivor a question and hear a response in real time directly from authentic footage. And when we worked with 10 survivors on that project as a life-size 3D display, and when we were at the end of that project, we started to think we could do this with anybody. You know, how can we preserve these experiences or create these unique encounters that we won't get to have in this sort of Q&A format? So that's how the project developed.
That's fantastic, and it just reminds me of when we first met and hearing about this kind of approach you had, which is so valuable. And actually the technology was just the vessel for the content, and what made it important was the stories that you were trying to tell. And that's
why it's really good to meet, you know, the MMU and the fact that you were connected with issues around interactive storytelling, which is really helpful for us.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of the work that I'd been looking at before, it became really apparent that the agents that we were seeing kind of proliferating, the conversational agents, the chatbots, were being used mainly informationally, you know, and it was quite a straightforward kind of if you wanted to find out, you know, FAQs and that kind of thing, but there was nothing really out there that was doing that job of storytelling. And so it made a lot of sense to start talking about research, I think. So I would also like to ask, in terms of this project, you know, why the focus on a musician? And I would just like to direct that question to Paul Canty.
Well, it's funny, when we started this particular project, we didn't have a particular talent in place. It was very much, we had this idea about what we wanted to do and thinking about how we were going to do it. And we felt that because this approach could fit almost anyone, it felt like, you know, we could work towards that. As part of that, though, we were thinking, well, it needs to be someone who can tell a story, who has enough life experience for it to be a story, but also may be able to do additional stuff. So a musician, as well as being able to talk about their life and their experiences, could potentially not perform, but describe and show some of their expertise and describe some of their work. So hitting on that kind of skill set seemed to make a lot of sense for us. Also, we know that through research, and particularly some of our conversations with the National Portrait Gallery, who we're very, very close to, we know that people are very engaged with musicians generally, and whenever, so for example, at the National Portrait Gallery, whenever they have exhibitions that feature musicians, there's an increase in popularity of those exhibitions, which is quite interesting. So we kind of considered that as well. So we took all of that together and made connections with musicians and legends. And Nile Rodgers, when he became an option, we literally leapt at the chance. Him being a legend who's had such a life experience, worked with so many people, and still as relevant today as he was back in the early 70s.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it feels to me that choosing a star that was so is so influential, like Nile Rodgers, and it's often in ways that people and it came up a lot in testing. People quite often didn't realize to what extent he was so influential with people like Bowie and Madonna. That it was quite a kind of it's really one of those, like, you would never get to meet Nile, generally speaking, in real life. And I think it challenges notions around what we call parasocial, this kind of this sense of knowing someone but then not knowing you, and the excitement you have, which is slightly out of sync sometimes with the way the feelings they have for you because they don't know you. It really seems to kind of change our relationships a little bit to celebrity, would you say?
And I think that one of the things we found on from thinking about that parasocial relationship was also both the ability of this type of interactive experience to fill a gap between at the one end you've got the opportunities that fans have and audiences have to meet that person in the flesh, but very, very few people have that experience. And then there's an enormous gap. And then the next sort of step down is sort of people watching a live stream Q&A with that talent or with that artist. And you have thousands of people watching and only about 10 people getting to actually ask a question. So you've got 10 people engaged and thousands of people just watching someone else conduct the interview. So where we really felt there's the opportunity for sort of contributing towards a closer relationship with the artist is this type of experience that fills the gap, that enables more people to ask questions on a mass scale, just shy of that sort of one-to-one meeting.
There's also the added kind of benefit, which I don't think was immediately apparent when we started, was that if I did end up in a room with Nile Rodgers, which I actually did, but if I did, I wouldn't necessarily know what the hell to ask, and I'd feel possibly awkward or embarrassed. What we do offers a safe space for that, because it's a suspension of disbelief. People know that Nile Rodgers isn't really there, but they know that they can talk to him. So there's that the fear of asking something diminishes because of that situation, and gives people the freedom to engage and ask more. So that's a really powerful benefit, I think, to that relationship.
I mean, it speaks to something, Toby, you've spoken about before around interactive documentary and the crossover maybe with celebrity documentary and musical documentary as well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of, I was just thinking, just to backtrack a little bit, that notion of relevance, I think, is really interesting with someone like Nile, because there's so many different versions of Nile. And this is it's very rare to have somebody who was relevant in the 70s and they have an identity in the 70s. Then in the 80s, there's a different type of Nile in the 80s. There's a different type of Nile in the 90s. And in the 2000s, there's very, very few artists existed. Madonna potentially is one. Johnny Cash, although Johnny Cash disappeared for about 20 years. But, you get these types of legendary figures, but there are not many of them. especially at the kind of caliber Niall was working at. So when you get these kind of different identities, it's like really difficult to get a cohesive sense of that there's one person that actually sits behind all these different personas. So and there's a real worth, I think, in the fact, you know, you have this situation, this experience that you can go into, and you go and you speak to, and this person, of course, Niall, he knits all together because it's him just talking about his life. But that's not the way we perceive it as outsiders. We perceive that there's these different people, just as with Madonna. Madonna's got all these different types of identities. And you think about Madonna in a number of different ways, because she's an actress here, and she's a filmmaker there, and she's a songwriter there, and she's a producer there. And it's a really nice and amazing experience, I think, in terms of being able to get a real sense of the person who sits behind all these multiple identities.
And that came out in the feedback, didn't it, during testing, which you know, you and the MMU team were so helpful with, in that the feedback that we got was quite sort of emotional. People used emotional language, didn't they? And they talked about the warmth of his personality coming through, and a sense that they sort of seems like such a nice guy, and that sense of, as you were just talking about, Toby, that sense of him as a person. And I think I found that really, really rewarding, because that's what we wanted to achieve, this sense of what would it be like to be in the presence of that person and be able to explore all of these things. And I think that was also credit to our design partners as part of the consortium to Bright White, who also really sort of thought about that, how that personal manifestation of that person in the VR environment could really take effect.
Yeah, I mean, the best, I mean, often they say the best design is the design that you don't notice at all, because it just seems normal. And I think that was the thing, is that you really got that feedback from people, especially the participants who were able to use the full VR experience, because some of the testing was done due to COVID in different formats. But that all the way throughout, you got this kind of sense of him feeling like he was in the room with them, that I've just had a nice little chat with, you know, this superstar. And I think that is all down to great design. It's all around, you know, the flow of the narrative, and again, back to that part Paul was talking about. It's arming these people, you know, arming audiences with the ability, the questions they need to ask, to have a great Q&A with Nile Rodgers, and not worry about, oh, should I ask this, should I ask that, oh, did I ask the wrong questions? They know they've got a great set of questions.
I think that was also another thing that was really interesting about, you know, going into this space with Nile, and the fact that you can actually chart your own trajectory. You can make your own documentary about Nile. It's really powerful. So, you know, if you want to know a bit more about his studio life, you can go that route through the questions. Or if you want to know a bit more about his personal life, you can go that route. Or if you want to know about his disco era. And I think that's really powerful, and has, you know, like large implications and ramifications for a lot of other sectors going forward.
Absolutely. And I think just a brief note on insights in relation to that. So Toby, you were just talking about the way in which people can chart their way through the content, and they get that individual personalized experience at scale. But also on the other end, the artist, or the subject, the interviewee, is getting an insight into what those people want to know about. So it's this sort of two-way conversation that is taking place, but not at the same time. So we're seeing, you know, what types of questions are people asking? What are they interested in? You know, is there something I can do in the future that might meet that audience need that I didn't cover? And that's a really interesting area of research, I think, for us in the future.
And I think it speaks a little bit to the nature of interactive design and processes, is that by doing this, there is no way of being the author and just dropping this product and go, this is fantastic. You know, there is an approach, but it's very difficult to develop this to like a commercial model without actually doing these iterative stages, where you find out so much more about the audience than you would ever do if you just kind of bringing the final product to your audience at the end. Interactivity necessitates that kind of what happens when I give this to someone, what would happen next, and you can't answer those questions without testing. So yeah. I mean, in terms of this, do you think there are kind of ramifications, implications of this technology on other kind of aspects of celebrity culture, Sarah?
Well, I think that this element of the celebrity or the person of note understanding more about their audience and fan base is fundamentally important, because it connects with their ability to meet the audience needs, their ability to understand their fan base better, as well as the fans understanding them better. And also picking up on thinking about the quantity of content. With the Audience with a Hero project, we had 5.5 hours of usable content. So for an audience member or a fan, that is a richness, going back to this sort of navigating your own way through the content piece. It's a richness that you would never get in a million years. You're never going to have 5.5 hours time sitting down with these types of people.
That's right.
But going through, sorry, go on, Paul, yeah.
So I was just going to say, and in terms of comparing that with other ways of, so like the linear kind of video approach, which is it doesn't engage people in the same way, but there's also the you're seeing more and more the kind of deepfake aspect of connecting with people, and there are ways where you can quite quickly spin up a likeness of someone like Nile. The great thing about our approach is that it's absolutely authentic. It has the timbre of his speech. It's directly from his mouth. You know it's him, and that significance makes all the difference, I think, in terms of the actual experience.
Absolutely, because it's not just about what he says; it's about exactly how he says it, where the pauses are, where the humour is. You know, when he's being ironic, and you can't fake that because it's him. That's right.
I mean, you see it a lot, actually. I think with deepfake, as well as it doesn't really matter if they didn't say it, then it doesn't matter if it looks exactly right. You know, this comes back to this notion of documentary and what documentary is for, and it's about, you know, one of the aspects of it is authenticity, I think, and yeah, it's a really interesting era we're moving into in terms of deepfakes, and they will be, you know, it's kind of the invention of the camera versus painting, that we will find, I think, different uses for film and authentically created content in the context of the ease with which we can fake other types of similar types of content.
Yeah, and there might be. Sorry, I was just going to say there might be fusions of both of those going forwards, which could still have relevance. And it's a question of how you push each bit, I guess, to see how authentic the thing can remain. I think our approach was very much the video-based approach is absolutely about knowing that what you're seeing is what actually happened. But yeah, I'm sure there are ways you can turn up and turn down certain things, but retain that level of authenticity within this brave new world that we're in.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Or as Donald Trump would have it, this fake new world we're in.
Yeah.
So they should,
absolutely.
They should, given that he's thankfully fading off into the back.
Fake news and old news.
I shouldn't bring that.
I mean, in terms of kind of contemporary issues, I'd bring us back to how might this type of experience be able to assist the cultural recovery or the development of museums and the heritage sector in a kind of post-COVID environment? No, that's to Toby.
Yeah, I mean, I think this type of process was really interesting pre-COVID. It was made pre-COVID. It was really relevant pre-COVID. The idea of for example, in Manchester, we have a lot of cultural organisations that bring a lot of artists and high-profile people into the city to work with. So Manchester International Festival, Abandon Normal Devices, Future Everything, to name a few. For organisations like that, you know, it's really useful in terms of you bring an artist in to work on a project and having the capacity to capture the pre-production process, the post-production process, all the behind the scenes work, the odd kind of downtime where you might get an odd snippet of an interview. Often those are really revealing times. You know, being able to capture this type of documentary footage and being able to put it, you know, recalibrate it into this type of experience really adds value, I think. This was the value before COVID. I think post or during COVID, it becomes even more relevant because, as we know, organizations have really had to pivot strongly towards digital online delivery for obvious reasons. So innovative forms of digital interaction are at a premium right now. And I think projects like this show the way forwards. They really do. I think it's a real flagship type of project that will potentially have huge ramifications for the way we think about not just projects, but the interactive nature of intimacy as well, how we deal with intimacy, how we navigate intimacy, how we find more interesting ways to forge intimate links between cultural producers and their audiences.
I think there's this balance as well between what's happened over the past sort of number of years, really, is the way in which people are reacting differently to long form content and short content. And I think one of the things that our approach really pushes forward is this sense of giving a long form content experience, but in short, personalized pieces. So we can kind of play off this and respond to people's interest in short answers and clips, but actually keeping them within the extended content experience for a long period of time. And that's got real resonance with regards to educational impact and maintaining educational attention as well, which we hope will make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's interesting research around the fact that compared to human interactions, you will speak to a bot. You know, you'll give it shorter utterances, but you'll speak for longer because you're not worried about the amount of time that you're speaking. There's no social norming going on. So I think, yeah, it's a really interesting point, that, and I think the research backs that up. And I mean, it takes us on to this idea around new audiences, really, for this kind of experience. What's your thinking around that? Where's the future around this, Sarah?
Well, Paul, I think, do you want to take that one, actually?
I can, yeah. So we see a lot of opportunity in multiple sectors, actually. I mean, our initial consideration was in the cultural and entertainment sector. So certainly looking at music and cultural figures generally. But it's interesting, we've already had quite a lot of interest in the sports area, particularly Premiership football. So we're seeing quite a lot of interest and potential take up there. It's basically connecting fans to like a scarcity of available talent. Wherever there is that, seems to be an opportunity for us to bridge that gap. So I mean, as Toby alluded to earlier, education is also a really vital opportunity, not least because of the area in higher education, especially during COVID, but possibly further down that line as well. And yeah, I see that there's a lot of other opportunities, certainly in the marketing space too. So there's marketing and advertising, enabling people to connect with culturally significant people, and potentially brands and brand endorsements as well. So yeah, there's a real value across the board, really. So yeah, it's exciting for us. It's almost like, where do we start? Yeah, there's a real breadth of opportunity, I think.
I think one of the things that's been really interesting from our perspective is it's kind of taken a lot of our hypotheses around what people expect from speech-based interaction and kind of trashed it to some extent, in that people are they're digitally literate and they understand it. There's this space, I think we talked about it before, where if you're having a conversation with Nile Rodgers, you go and you know that you suspend your disbelief and you are talking to Nile Rodgers, but that doesn't mean to say you act exactly in the way that you would have had a conversation with Nile Rodgers in meet space. And I think that's what's really exciting about this, is there's a growing literacy around new forms of content that could come out of that. And in education, that means that, okay, your lecturer might not actually be there to ask you a specific question, but you actually might find that you can look up the question that you wouldn't have ever thought of asking and get a really good answer about that. You might, develop a confidence in asking questions that you would never have had before. And suddenly you can take that into a lecture theatre.
Yeah, I think there's something there also about, in terms of this distinction that sometimes gets made by people of certain generations, where there's this distinction between real life and online life. And I don't think for young people that exists. No. That is not a distinction, and it's a mistake. And it's a mistake that's made in companies. It's a mistake that's made in universities, to think that this exists. Real life is online life. It's like, it absolutely, in some ways, it's more real and more meaningful than physical life, if we're carrying on with that binary. So I think there's something really interesting there in terms of what you were saying, David. It really, that it doesn't have, I don't think there is this sense when you go into it, it's just like, it's but it's trying to replicate now, but it's not actually now. It's like, we know that the literacy is at a tide mark level now, where we get that, and that doesn't even need to be touched upon, and we've moved beyond that as a culture, which is good.
And we were talking, Toby and I were having a good conversation the other week about how, in the education context, because people do understand other people through their digital representation, through the videos they're posting, through kind of, you're watching other people's lives, and that's what people are used to doing, as Toby was just saying. And then we were talking about how through creating educational experiences and enabling students to have this contact with their tutor or their lecturer through this type of interactive conversation, they will naturally build up a better, warmer relationship, presuming that they come across as a sort of warm person on the experience. But there's the potential for building up that more in-depth community relationship through this media, which I think is really exciting, actually, for across all the work we do.
Yeah, it's parasocial again, isn't it? I guess. It's that perception of knowing and getting to know that person as well. And from the other side, thinking about, certainly from an education perspective, a lot of these conversations aren't finite. So enabling students or whoever to ask questions, and if those questions haven't been asked yet, then just answer them and add to the mix. So the corpus of content can just grow and grow, becoming more and more, even more viable, I guess. So yeah, it's an interesting way of approaching that.
I mean,
given the importance of remote education going forward, again, innovative forms of being able to deliver content in a meaningful way is the ante is really high now. I mean, I think it's quite critical for the education sector that it moves forward in this direction. And again, you know, this project has been a really strong precursor, I think, and a really good example of how we need to move forward.
Mm.
I mean, that's been really thought-provoking for me, and I was involved in the project. So thank you all for that conversation. It's been fantastic. I think unless anyone else has any closing remarks, I think we will.
Can I just do a quick one?
Sarah?
Yeah, just a really, really quick one. Just to say, one of the things that really came out of the project was us as a company, as a consortium, you know, recognizing how much we get out of research organisations and working with MMU and working with Bright White. And I think it's that sort of cross-fertilization of skills and backgrounds and work that's really helped us move the work forward. So that's been really great.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. From a SODA perspective, I think it's exactly these type of collaborations that are, you know, these are the catalysts that allow us to show glimpses of the future.
Mm. Yeah, and thanks to Innovate UK for helping kind of enable that, I think, as well. That kind of innovation and that approach has facilitated some great work too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can only echo everyone's sentiments. You know, yes, it's been a really instructive piece of research in terms of learning how to work, you know, impactfully with SMEs, fantastic SMEs who are doing cutting edge work. And as Toby said eloquently, it is a glimpse of the future. So we're looking forward to using that knowledge to teach young people going forwards. It's fantastic.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. Thanks, Toby.
Yeah,
thanks everyone.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us for this presentation. We'd love to hear from you, and there's a slide at the end if you'd like to get in touch with us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you very much.